Hello, everybody. This is Nick Totaro, Professor of Information Technology and Computer Science, Lakeland Community College. Many times we'll use tools and we'll just fire them up, use them, and away we go. And we don't really dive into how that tool was developed or what it really does. We basically just use it, and that's fine. Probably 99.99% of the tools that we use in our world, we don't care how it was developed or what's the background story that's associated with it. In networking, we routinely use ping. Most people don't understand about the ICMP packages going and coming back and things like that, and that's fine. But occasionally, a tool will come along that I think, and many other people think, it's imperative that we understand the workings of that tool before we begin to use it. We can easily just fire it up and start something and then go, that's interesting. But I think it's more important and more critical with some of these tools that we really need to take a deep dive of what is going on in that tool so we better understand it and we can better use it. And in this video, we're going to be deep diving into Burp Suite. We're not going to be doing anything sophisticated with it. Basically, we're going to be talking about it, going to be installing it, basically explaining the situation. So in other videos, we will absolutely use Burp Suite as a method for pen testing. But in this video, all we're going to do is just really talk about Burp Suite. The best thing to do is just go up to my machine and let me explain it to you. All right, a couple websites. In this video, we're going to be using a couple tools. The big tool, obviously, is Burp Suite by Port Swigger. You can download a community edition. It does come in a Linux flavor and it does come in a Microsoft flavor. In this video, we're going to be using it on our Linux platform. There is professional versions of it where they don't restrict you. The community edition, they do a lot of restrictions. They do a lot of governing where they prevent a lot of traffic going through, and that's acceptable for our demonstration. So Burp Suite is a tool that allows us to do security testing. I don't even want to call it pen testing, but security testing on a web server. In other videos and other lectures, we talked about all the things that are associated with securing a web server. They're no longer just providing us information, we're giving it information, and web servers have fundamentally turned into a portal. So there are tools, Burp Suite is one of them, that allows us to security test or pen test that tool. Now let me make absolute clarity on this. This tool is designed for security professionals to stress or put a web server and its functions through some kind of test so that we can find potential problems, we can report them, and then the developers can fix them. Could it be used for hacking? Yes. Can it be used for ethical hacking? Absolutely. Generally speaking, you may have heard me talk about this in other videos, we look at things as a pen tester, somebody who has been given permission to put some kind of device or service or network through some kind of stress. We can do it as an ethical hacker, and that's somebody who has been given permission to look for vulnerabilities and exploit those vulnerabilities without having to without being giving too much information. And then there is the bug bounty, and those are individuals that go out there and put a computer through a test and basically look if there is a problem associated with that computer, so they can, or the service, I'm sorry, in which they can then report it. That's called a bug bounty. We are going to be kind of taking a look at it as a pen tester, a little bit a bug bounty, but more of a pen tester. So we're going to use the tool Burp Suite. We're going to use another tool, but it's really kind of what we're going to be looking at. And it is this BWAP. More about that later on. But BWAP is basically an extremely buggy web application. It is designed by our OWASP people, where it is intentionally designed to be practiced on. It is a learning environment. So many of the exploits, many of the issues involved with it are easily thwarted or prevented, but that's fine. It's meant for training. So you're going to see a page very similar to this. So let's go up to my machine and let me explain how Burp Suite works, and then we'll eventually install it and configure it. All right, this is a quick little diagram of our particular environment or potential setup. We have a client machine, that's going to be the machine that we're going to be running our testing from, and we have a web server in which we are going to be testing. Then we have some kind of connection. Now the connection may be the internet, it may be a private network, doesn't really matter. What's important is some kind of connection to the web server. And what I mean by that is sometimes if you have a powerful enough machine, all of this is contained into a single machine. You have the Burp Suite environment and you have the web server to do the testing. In this particular environment, in this particular demonstration, I'm going to be connecting through a local virtual network, so I'm not really covering the internet. What I'm basically saying is that Burp Suite can be used in a variety of ways over different mediums. One could be actually doing a live environment. Do not do these tools to computers out there on the wild, but we can do it over the internet. We can do it over a private network, or we could have it all self-contained into a given machine. Fine. So we have our connection to the web server and we have the web server. Fine. In our particular environment, the web server is going to be that BWAP. But let's talk about over here, our client workstation, what we are working on. That is the utility that's going to be, or that's the device that's going to be using the utility of Burp Suite. Now, how Burp Suite is set up. On this machine, Burp Suite is going to be acting as a proxy server, meaning that all communication between the web browser, or sometimes called the web, user agent, and the server will first have to go through the Burp Suite proxy. Now, the Burp Suite proxy is just a service that's going to be running on this workstation. So I can reference the service by giving it the local IP address of 127.0.0.1. I also tell it for Burp Suite, the port that Burp Suite uses for its proxy is 8080, right? So proxies are discussed, proxy servers are discussed in Networking Plus. But if you want additional information, please contact me about proxy servers or potentially look at videos out there on the internet. But anyways, Burp Suite is a application that's going to run on the workstation that's going to be acting as a intermediary between the user agent, i.e. the browser, and the server. So it's basically acting as a proxy server. Now let's take a look at my machine and let's set up Burp Suite. All right, we're at my machine. We're at Godzilla. We are not going to be ethical hackers. We're going to be pen testers. Okay, so we have been given permission to look at these web servers and see if we can discover any particular information. Now, there's going to be a lot of moving parts in this video trying to explain how this is set up and the direction that it's going. I'm not going to do the installs, the actual downloading of the information, then installing it on my computer. I'm just going to have it there. But, you know, obviously you would have to download these particular products and then install them onto your computer. The first program, it is built inside Kali. This is a Kali machine, is Burp Suite. So imagine that I've downloaded it and let's turn it on. And I can just look for it by saying burp and spell burp correctly. And it's going to fire up the community edition. I'm not paying for the full-blown edition. This is good enough for us to practice these type of techniques, right? It's not going to allow us to save things. It also has some, in some applications, it has some governing effect. Basically, there are some applications in which they do what they call fuzzy testing. And what fuzzy testing is, it's a term used in application development in which you are giving data to input and you try to make as much data as possible to see if you can break the input or see what the input does. So we call that fuzzy. Well, in the enterprise edition of Burp Suite, they can hit that amount of fuzzy very, very quickly. In this one, it's a little bit slower, but I'm just explaining to you that the enterprise edition has some things removed. For example, I can only do temporary projects versus keeping the projects. And then there's some tools I can still use, but they would be much slower. So don't worry about fuzzing, just kind of explain. There are tools that are not available. I can't save a project. And then there are tools that they might slow down considerably. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to do the temporary project. And I'm going to start Burp. Give it a second. Now, several things are happening here. Basically, for our discussion in this video, two things are generally happening here. One, it's starting the Burp application. So that's going to allow us to gather information. But more importantly, it's starting the proxy service, the Burp proxy service. So when I do start using Burp Suite, it is basically going through itself. It's going through its own proxy and then communicating with the web server. And you're going to see why. That allows a proxy server basically goes out to the web for you and grabs those pages and holds on to those pages at the same time, delivering those pages to a browser or a user agent. This is not a man in the middle. It's not a man in the middle attack. It is a device in the middle. It is a proxy server in the middle, which is standard networking procedure. So Burp, the application Burp, is basically going to be talking to itself as a proxy, going out, getting web pages, bringing them back to Burp so we can look at them, but yet still delivering those web pages back to the browser. So that's what happened when I turned this on. The first area we have to be concerned with is looking at the browser, looking at the proxy and eventually looking at the browser so it feeds through there. If I go to proxy, one of the things that's strongly recommended is make sure that the intercept is currently turned off or it's going to pick up all the traffic. And you'll see why in a bit. So one of the first things I do when I turn on Burp Suite is I go to proxy and I make sure that intercept is turned off. Now I need to set up the browser. So we have this proxy server in the middle, this application that's also acting as a proxy server in the middle. Now let's browse to our web page. So I'm going to go to my browser, but I have to tell my browser to use Burp Suite as a proxy. Now, generally, there are two ways to do this. One is to actually go into the browser settings, and I'll demonstrate that in a second, as soon as it comes up. I'll demonstrate that in a second. And the other way is to use a browser plugin that would allow me to change proxy servers more on the fly. And that's the approach that I tend to use, and you'll see why in this demonstration. So my browser is set up. Now, if I start communicating with whatever web server out there, Burp is not collecting that information, right? It's sitting there, but I haven't told the browser to start, I haven't told the browser to go through the Burp proxy to start collecting this information. So nothing is basically happening on the Burp side. And I can do a quick demonstration on that. If I just go, okay, 10.0.1.9, I hit enter, give it a second. It's going to that local web server I have on my network, and it brings it up. If I was to go to Burp and I say, show me HTTP, there's nothing there because the Burp Suite hasn't been used as a proxy, hasn't been used as a collection point, so nothing is there. So what I have to do is I'm going to close this up for a reason. I'm going to start the browser again, but once it starts up, I'm going to change the browser settings, and this is important. I'm going to change the browser settings to go through or use Burp Suite as a proxy server. And while it's bringing it, if you go to different browsers, do it differently, all right? But all fundamentally do the same thing, but they may do it differently. I am using Firefox. So if I go to settings, if I go to the browser settings, I click on settings, different browsers going to have in different locations, so you'd have to look that up. And if I scroll all the way down, you see we have down here, we have network settings. And if I click on network settings, give it a second. And at this point, what I would do here, and I don't like this approach because I don't like always changing my browser settings when I'm using things. I would have to say manual proxy configuration. I'd have to give the address of the proxy server. Since Burp Suite proxy is on my local machine, I would give it the local address of 127.0.0.1. They call that the local host address. I call it the loopback address. It just means it's referring back to this machine. I would tell it 127.0.0.1 because I'm going to be working with Burp Suite. And then I would tell it use port 8080. That is the port on the proxy server that this client would be talking to, the user agent or the browser would be talking to. Burp Suite uses 8080. I don't like using that method. The method I choose, because it's just a little bit cleaner, is to, there is a tool. Let me see if I can bring up the website. It's already been installed. It's called Proxy, and it is a plugin for the browser. And the plugin for the browser, you can download it. They have different versions for different browsers, but it basically allows me to change proxy servers pretty much on the fly. So I don't have to go into the settings every time to change a particular proxy server. And if I go to Proxy, I know there's other plugins. This is the one I think personal opinion, this is the one I think is probably the most clean. Start there. So we don't have to go all the way down. Just understand that, or have it download. This is a plugin that I've already installed on my machine. And I can do the download again, but I'm going to save some time here. Once I have that installed, all right, instead of doing preferences like I did with this network settings down here, if you go over here to plugins or extensions, and if I click on extensions, it shows me all the extensions that I've put into this Firefox browser. One of the extensions is Foxy Proxy. You can slightly notice here, it's probably not coming on the screen, it has a little not in use symbol there. If I click on this, give it a second, it opens up a list of proxy servers that I have. So I have a couple proxy servers. Right now, the proxy service is being turned off, meaning I am not using a proxy server. I'm not using that intermediary. I have a proxy server for Burp Suite. And I also have a proxy server for an open proxy server that's a live proxy server out on the internet. Because if I want to use the functionality of a proxy server on the internet where they basically would hide my IP address and do some caching, I can use that. But I'm more concerned with Burp Suite. And if I go to Burp Suite, and then I go to options, I can add more proxy servers. Since I've already done this with Burp Suite, I'll just show you what it looks like. So if I go to the different proxies that I set up, I've already set up Burp Suite, and I gave it the title Burp Suite. I say, okay, where is that proxy? It's on the local host. It's on 127.0.0.1. And I'm using HTTP, and I'm going to port 8080. That is the port on the Burp Suite proxy that's going to allow me to communicate to that Burp Suite proxy, and that Burp Suite proxy will then go out to the web, pull pages back, and keep those pages for me. So it's not a man-in-the-middle attack. I'm going to keep stressing that. It's not a man-in-the-middle attack, but it is a device in the middle that's basically holding on to those pages. So I, as a pen tester, can look at those pages and make some choices. All right. So you will notice that it also says HTTP. Can I do Burp Suite with HTTPS? Yes. HTTP meaning it's going to be clear text. HTTPS is going to be encryption. But I would want to set up, if you're just practicing with it, you may not want to do it, but I may want to set up that it will also support HTTPS. So I'm going to do that. Not going to worry about this. I don't have to set it up here. right? All I need to do is set up a certificate in my browser, the whole certificate authority. I set up a certificate in my browser to say, if I need to talk HTTPS, use this certificate. Now you begin to understand why I think this video and this tool is pretty cool, because if I just say turn on Burp Suite, do this with the proxy server, you don't get the full view here. We are now talking, we're talking private networks, internet, web servers, proxy servers, certificate servers, proxy server ports, a whole variety of things. And we haven't even started or really done anything with Burp Suite. So anyways, my proxy is set up. So I basically, when I go back here, you'll notice right here, instead of having not on, it has a little purple burp there. That is telling me that all traffic on this browser is now being routed through Burp Suite, and Burp Suite is going out to the internet for me. But I'm going to do one more step in the browser. Is I'm going to set up the browser to have a certificate. This is cool. Going to have a certificate that will allow Burp Suite to do HTTPS if we so desire. So to do that, I'm just going to type HTTP burp. And since it's going through the Burp Suite proxy, it opened up a little web page and it said Burp Suite Community Edition, welcome to Burp Suite. So I now know this was two things. Most important thing is to get the certificate. But the second thing is I now know this browser is actually going through the Burp Suite proxy. And over here on the right-hand side, you have this little thing called CA certificate. That's going to allow HTTPS to be used in Burp Suite. I've already done it, but let me show it to you real quick. If I click on it, give it a second, it starts downloading the certificate. Fine. It's already, okay, so it's downloaded the certificate. Now all I need to do, I'm not going to cancel it, it's completed. I would go to the settings of my browser. I keep calling it a user agent, but my browser. And if I go to settings, I've already done this to save some time on this video. And if I go to privacy and security and I scroll down, did I just miss it? Certificates, yes, under here, underneath security, they have something called certificates. I can say view certificate. And then I can import that certificate. Now, I've already done that to save a little time, but I would say import. I would navigate to where that certificate was loaded, and that it's right there. I would say import it, and away we go. Now Burp Suite would be able to use both HTTP and HTTPS. Again, I think this is really kind of cool and really kind of interesting because there's so many layers involved with Burp Suite. It's just the basic networking, the basic proxy, certificate authorities, and we haven't even touched looking at web pages yet. So can I cancel here? And I'm going to close out of here and close out of here. Now what I'm going to do is after all of this, I am going to go to that web page. I'm going to go to that web server and I'm going to do some quick pen testing, right? Nothing in this video, nothing major, but I'm going to do some quick pen testing. All right. So I know the server's address. It's 10.0.1.9. Give it a second. Now, warning, if you didn't set it up right, it may come back like you didn't set your proxy set up and you have to go back through all the different steps. This is not a video about installing anything. This is just an explanation of what got installed. So now I made a connection to that server. I could have made a connection to any server. I'm going to be very, very safe in this. and I'm only going to be working with my server. But could I use this server in a while? Yes, I'm not going to do that. Even though it's pen testing, even though it's fairly safe, I'm going to respect other people's stuff. So here I'm at. Now let's go back to Burp Suite real quickly. Now you can see the HTTP and HTTPS history. I'm only going to be looking at HTTP in this video. There's been some activity involved here. And here's where an expertise in web development, web communication has to come into play. You will notice over here, we have the ULRs. That's fine. We have these things called status codes. We'll talk about those briefly. And we have these things called methods. We have the post method for this video, and in other videos, post means that we are sending information or posting information to a web page versus getting or having information come down from a web page. So let me pick on one. I'm going to pick on this one right here. And sometimes my clicking runs a little fast, so windows pop up. What I am looking at here is the communication between my browser and the web server. Burp Suite got that communication. So I went out there and said, hey, I need something from you. I'm getting something from you. That comes down. Burp Suite holds on to a copy for that, but still passes the copy or still passes the communication back to the browser. And here we can start looking at information. In this one, it basically is telling me right here, I wish it could be just a little bit bigger. It's telling me the host that I am talking to. So it requested the host, my machine requested from the host this particular information. Here's the information that came down. The host agent, or the user agent. This is my browser information here. Right. So there's browser information there. Over here, this was the response. This is the response from the web server. And you can see, oh, that's interesting. The response from the web server was those web pages. I have told people this for years. Every time you surf on the internet, the entire content of that web page has to come down to your machine, and the browser opens up that HTML or whatever code that may be. So let me begin to recap here. And in other videos, we'll look at things in much more detail. You know what? One more quick demonstration. Let me go to, this might be a little bit more interesting. Again, this is not a man in the middle. This is not gathering information in regards we're looking for pen testing. This is just how the internet and HTML works. I've been given permission by myself to test this computer, so there's no nefarious things in here. But you'll notice, enter your credentials, and the credentials for this particular box is called bbug. So I'm going to say bbug. I'm going to keep the security set at low, and let me log in. And now it is logged into the BWAP portal. Let's go back to Burp Suite and let's see what communication it provided. And make sure that we're on HTTP history. Okay, right here. Here's the last two commands. Now it's just kind of populating information. One of the commands was post. I posted command to the PHP login screen, and the PHP login screen, I gave it a username and I gave it a password and I gave it a security level, or I assume the security level. If I click on post, and here is what was posted or sent to the web server. So it posted, and if you look down here, it said, okay, you sent it the username B and the password bug. Because it was HTTP, it wasn't encrypted, and this is not a Believe it or not, this is not a vulnerability or anything like that. This is just, I'm kind of explaining to you how this stuff transfers. If it was a real environment and we're seeing clear text, yes, then we're dealing with vulnerability. In this particular one, it's not a vulnerability. The point I'm trying to make at this point of our discussion is now I am gathering information between the browser, also called the user agent, and the web server. That traffic is coming from the web server, staying in Burp Suite, but yet still being passed to the browser. It's not a man in the middle attack, it is an observation. Now think about this before we break off. You know what? Stop looking at my screen. Let me wrap some things up. Now think about everything in this quick demonstration or fairly longer demonstration. All we were doing was setting up this particular environment, but it was, to me, it was really cool because we're dealing with networking, we're dealing with proxy servers, we're dealing with ports, we're dealing with certificate agents, we're dealing with a whole bunch of things. And that gets us to the point where we can start pen testing. Maybe we can start doing some penetration studies on a machine to see, is there potential weaknesses and vulnerabilities that then we can report back to the client or even back to ourselves. Let's say I'm a web developer. This is a tool that can be used by a web developer to see where things need to be fixed. It showed me the Apache server versions. It showed me the PHP versions. And if there's vulnerabilities in there, then we would potentially need to upgrade things. So this is step one. And all we've done was set up the tool. But this is a really, really interesting tool. I think it's unfortunate a lot of times the labs just say, go use Burp Suite. Set this up, and away you go, and let's use Burp Suite. I think it's more important that we understand how this tool is working. So with that being said, let's go out and learn something.